It wasn't until I was on tour with a chamber orchestra, a youth orchestra, a long time ago, I can't even remember the date, but the wall was still there. And we were in Berlin, and one of the orchestra knew somebody in the Berliner Philharmonic and said, hey, we can go to the Berliner Philharmonic rehearsal and listen to it. And I thought, it was just, wow, the Berliner Philharmonic. And it was the first time I'd heard this orchestra live. And it may sound like a cliche, but I was literally blown away by the sound of this orchestra. There was a difference in this sound, this German horn sound as well. Suddenly, I found this sound that had always been in my head that I'd never managed to find before. And then suddenly when I got the job, I realized this is for life. I've got to stay this good. And one of the very first concerts that I had to play after my trial was over was Beethoven 9. And in Beethoven 9, there's a really big low horn solo. And I knew this was coming up. And I must say that funnily enough, that concert was scarier for me. Even though I was a full-time member, no one could throw me out anymore. This Beethoven 9 was scarier than most of my trial because I was finally in and I didn't want to disappoint anyone. We were quite a musical family in that there was always music going on at home. My brother and sister and I, we liked to sing, we liked to bang around on the piano at home. I was already playing little things when I was 3, but music wasn't the focus. My father was a foreign correspondent, so we moved around quite a lot. We moved to Japan when I was very young, when I was 2 years old. And then we went back to America and spent 6 years there. And then my father was stationed in Moscow, and it was really Cold War time. So it was quite a challenge for the family to all move there. It was an interesting time for us because as children, having to move around a lot like this, it meant we had to change the schools. It meant we had to make new friends. It made us quite communicative, I think, because it wasn't easy always, but it was helpful in communication because we really learned that as children that you had to be open and you had to be able to talk to people. When we moved to England, I was 13 years old and the culture shock was huge. We'd been at an American school, an international school with people from all over the world, and I went into a British school, a very strict uniform. I had to wear a tie every day. It was quite a shock to the system, but I could still play the piano, and I decided I really wanted to do that. I could be a pianist. And the teacher at my school in England said, that's fine, you can study the piano, but you need a second instrument because the music colleges in London need a second instrument. And I said, okay, well, what can I play? That's fine, I'll play, what can you give me? He said, well, we have a flute or an oboe or a clarinet. Now, they're all great instruments, but I wasn't really very interested in playing the flute or the clarinet. There were a lot of people at school already playing that. And then the teacher at school said, well, we have a French horn here, but that's more something for the boys. Because in those days, there were really not that many girls playing the French horn. It's changed, thank goodness, today. But in those days, it was really more for the boys. And for some reason, I just thought, I want to try that. I really want to try the French horn. I want to be a little bit different. I want to see what this boys' instrument is all about. These beautiful double horns that we play today in the orchestra and the Berliner Philharmonic, they all come from the same firm, which is great for a unified horn sound. They are Alexander horns, and they are double horns and heavy and beautiful and shiny. But of course, they didn't always look like this. The original horn was centuries ago, basically a signal. It was just an instrument of signal for the people to say, dinner is ready or the enemy are coming. And we think the original signal instruments could have been a shell like this one. Great. Not so easy to play. From the shell, they discovered that they could use animal horns. And the animal horns had the advantage, the sound carried very far. And after the animal horns, the longer the horns got, the more notes they could play. So at some point they had to roll them up and they became hunting horns. And I'm a vegetarian, so I don't like the idea of hunting. So I hope that when my hunting horns play, they scare away the animals. I can imagine that that's what this sound did. But composers then decided they liked the sound of these hunting horns. They started building them into their operas, but horns only appeared on stage as part of the hunting scenes. But eventually we won, and all composers realized how fantastic horns could be. And today we play on these beautiful double horns. When the position at the Berliner Philharmonic came up, I thought, do I even want to go for it? Because I've been at the Staatsoper for 10 years. It's very difficult to do an audition if you haven't done one for a long time. So I worked as hard as I could. Of course, I had a job, so I had to do my job. I had rehearsals at 10 o'clock and I had operas in the evening. So I came in at 7 o'clock and I practiced in the morning. I stayed on after the performances and practiced after the opera performances. I wanted to come away from the audition and say, I did everything I could, and now it's up to whatever. And that's really what happened. I turned up for the audition and I felt very well prepared. I never expected to get that far in the auditions. We had 3 rounds, and in the last round it was me and another guy who'd been playing with the orchestra for a very long time. So after 3 rounds, he and I went out and I actually congratulated him because I thought he'd play better than I did. And we had to wait about 20-25 minutes, which is always a sign of a lot of discussion going on in the hall. And then the orchestra musicians started coming out, and someone came to me and said, congratulations. I said, what for? He got the job, didn't he? And I don't know who it was, but whoever it was said, no, you got the job. I thought, and you don't get it in that moment. I think everyone that's won a job in the Berlin Phil will say the same. At that moment, you don't quite understand that you got the job. And then the horn section came running over and all started congratulating me. And I remember someone saying, shall we call your mum? When Sir Simon came to the Berliner Philharmonic, it was the same time I did. In 2001, he started 2002, and he brought with him this education program, which is totally normal in England. I'd been doing this as part of my studies for quite a while, but in Germany it hadn't really quite taken on yet. And he brought his concept from England with him. And that's when I discovered really that this is something that I absolutely love doing, totally passionate about. Oh, it's about to start. Let's go to the Philharmonie for the concert. I started going into the schools with groups of colleagues from the Berlin Philharmonic and realized that actually I enjoyed it and I could talk to the kids and they could respond to me, and it was something that I felt very comfortable doing. Welcome to the Digital Concert Hall. Welcome to our concert. Merry Christmas, as you can see. Ich bin Sarah, ich spiele das Horn bei der Berliner Philharmoniker. Wir freuen uns so sehr, dass so viele da sind. Heute geht es eigentlich gar nicht ums Horn, sondern um diese gut aussehende Kollegen hier auf der Bühne. Das Blechbläserensemble der Berliner Philharmoniker. 6 Schlagzeuger der Berliner Philharmoniker. 12 Cellisten der Berliner Philharmoniker. Die Bläser der Berliner Philharmoniker. Unser Dirigent, kennt ihr den? Der Sir Simon, der hat so viele Haare und macht immer so vom Orchester. Ja, da ist er doch. Hallo, Simon. if you introduce children very early to music, then and the instruments that we play, then we have a hope for building a new generation of musicians. But not only musicians, we need audience. So if the children go to concerts very early and enjoy that, maybe they'll come to concerts later. Horn players like to be together. We like to do things together, we like to play together, we like to laugh together, and it creates a very nice atmosphere. And in our horn section in the Berliner Philharmonic, we have a lot of fun as well. Horn playing is quite a stressful thing, but we like to use humor to combat that. We have a lot of fun together. We love to play together, and one of my favorite things is when I have to practice, when I don't have to work. I don't like to practice alone, so I play duets with some of my colleagues, and that's one of the most fun ways I know of to keep your chops in shape. And my favorite duet partner is Klaus Wallendorf.